Hey guys, Marstingen here, bringing you another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video. And so for today's video, we are going to discuss what I think the leader skills will be for the two new LRs for the download celebration. Obviously, we are still working under the assumption at this point that the two new cards are going to be a Goku and Frieza of some variety. I'm not going to speculate in this video too much about what I think they're actually going to be. Like, you know, we don't know yet whether there'll be transformation, so will it be base form to Super Saiyan Goku, or will it just be Super Saiyan Goku and then it'll have an active skill attack, or super attack nullification, or a counter or something? And then Frieza, is it going to be final form to full power? Is he going to start off as full power? Is it going to be like third form to final form? Or who knows? So all we're here to talk about is their leader skills. So I'm going to start with Goku, and then we're going to do the same for Frieza. What I've done here is brought up two of the Gokus who are from the Namek saga, from that, you know, the iconic Super Saiyan fight. And we're going to look at some categories that they are on that I think would be decent categories for them to have as one of their leader skills. And then we're going to talk about a potential new category for their secondary leader skill, and I'm going to do the same thing for the Frieza as well. So they do share a lot of categories, these two. Obviously, with the way transforming units work, even like the base to transforming Goku is obviously on like Super Saiyans, is on Exploding Rage, and so on and so forth. I tried to look at some of the categories that don't have as many appropriate leaders, or like as many common leaders. So we're going to have a look and see. So the first big one is obviously Super Saiyans. Now, personally for me, I'm still holding out a little bit of hope that the STR Namek Goku is going to get an easy A. So I actually wouldn't like the new Goku to lead Super Saiyans, because then that would kind of make easy Aing this guy not pointless, but once he gets an easy A, kind of like the UI Goku from the anniversary, you're going to be want to running him as the leader of your Super Saiyans team, right? So it doesn't really make sense for the new LR to come out and completely replace him, but it does make sense for this category to get a new leader. We only have the one actual Dokkan Fest lead with a 170 leader skill, and then we have the LR Spirit Bomb Goku as the sort of sub lead with a summonable LR level leader skill, which is still decent, but it's always good to have more than one like 170 lead spread leader for a category. And obviously, being the iconic fight where he becomes Super Saiyan for the first time, it would make sense for him to be the Super Saiyan category leader, just like it did make sense for the original version of this Namek Goku. But personally, I don't want it to be this one, but obviously this would make sense. Next up, we have Connected Hopes. Now, obviously on JP, they recently released a new Connected Hopes leader with the Goku and Vegeta that fuse into Gogeta, but for Global, we don't have that yet, and the only leader for this category so far is Pikkon. And now, we've talked about it a lot recently with other videos, but the GT Legendary Goku event, one of the missions is to beat it with a Connected Hopes team, and a lot of people struggle to do that if you don't have Pikkon. You can actually do it with a Super Saiyans team. A lot of these units are obviously on Connected Hopes as well. I did do a video for that, so you can search it up and find that on the channel if you don't have Pikkon. But having a new leader for that category would definitely be quite useful for global players, and for people on JP who maybe didn't summon too much during the Tanabata and didn't get the Gogeta. So I do think that would be an appropriate category for him. Obviously, whilst the wiki description is not like the official description from Akatsuki, and sometimes the description they put doesn't quite fit some of the units anyway, but it says consists of characters who represented someone's last hope. So obviously, going by like the dub version of Goku's speech when he transforms into a Super Saiyan, I mean, you could definitely see him being the leader for this category for sure. Next up, we have Exploding Rage. Now, again, JP just recently got a new leader with the Prime Battle Kid Gohan, but obviously his leader skill is quite low. You're probably not going to run him as a leader much, even if you are using him on an Exploding Rage team. And then that brings us back to the fact that the category only has one Dokkan Fest exclusive leader, and the leader is Beerus. And so Beerus on Exploding Rage, you kind of have the same problem that you have with him if you want to run him as a Realm of Gods lead, is that he doesn't really gel very well with the rest of the team. Like on Realm of Gods, if you're going to run Beerus, you probably want to run him alongside a Whis or Vados, or, you know, the LR Beerus and Whis. But most of the time when you build that team, you want to pack it full of like the various god form Saiyans or fusions. So when you look at Exploding Rage, I mean, all of the LRs apart from Janemba are all Saiyans or hybrid Saiyans. So none of these units link up particularly well with Beerus. And then when we look down the rest of the category, there's a lot of other units that just don't go super well with Beerus, but look how many Saiyans there are. So if we had a new Exploding Rage category leader who was a Saiyan, especially a Super Saiyan, that's going to be able to help you build teams that gel together much better, because they're obviously going to share a lot of common links. And then obviously, depending on what his secondary leader skill is, Exploding Rage has a nice little pool of units to tap into that wouldn't be available in his potential other leader skill. So I think Exploding Rage is definitely a good option. And then the other one that I picked here is Saviors. So we have the Tech Gohan, and then we have the LR Goku and Piccolo, who released on JP not long ago. Summonable LRs from like legendary summon banners I always kind of consider somewhat separate, because again, just like we were saying with like the Spirit Bomb Goku and some of the other like summonable LRs like the Gogeta, you might not necessarily have them because of how rare they are supposed to be. So Gohan has been the lead for a long time. Gohan is a great unit, obviously, and realistically, when you build out his team, you are mostly running Hybrid Saiyans. There's a couple of great units that you can bring in, like the Tech Krillin for the support, who is also a sub-lead. You've got the Oob as well. Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta being on this category, and Pycon is obviously very useful. But they're kind of the only few units, I guess also to Tech TN, depending on how you've built your team with tech units. But outside of Hybrid Saiyans, they're kind of the main units on here. So a new Saviors lead that then has a different secondary leader skill would basically enable you to create a much better combination, and actually some of these other units that are not just Hybrid Saiyans would probably get some usage as well on that team. And obviously Saviors consists of characters who save the day in a crucial moment. I mean, again, going by like the dub speech for Goku and the Super Saiyan transformation, I think that would be perfectly reasonable. So on to the new category. So I think the new category for Goku, and you'll kind of see how when I picked the one for Frieza, they kind of play off as like opposites of each other. But I think a new category for Goku should be Z Fighters. So I brought up the Z Fighters link here. It's not going to be like Kamehameha, where it's like, if you don't have this link, you're not on the category, like that kind of thing, apart from the odd exception. But the general gist is the Z Fighters. So in this category, I would include pretty much everyone who is one of the main good guy, like cast, from the start of the Saiyan saga up until the end of the Android/Cell saga. But I wouldn't include like future Gohan or the future Trunkses that are like, you know, the ones from Dragon Ball Super, for example. But one thing you see on here, like the Int Super Trunks has the Z Fighters link, but the other two don't. So the other two, who are obviously in Android/Cell saga, like this Goku, I guess this Vegeta, even though he's still a bit of a, I don't want to say bad guy, but you know, he's still doing Vegeta things at the time. But basically, like everyone who turns up at the fight to fight Cell at the Cell games, I would consider part of this category as well. So like the other Super Trunkses would be in here, the Vegeta and Trunks card together would be in here. And then obviously we would have like every Krillin, every Tien, every Yamcha, they would all be in here. I guess maybe not the ones from Super, but again, you could argue that like all the versions of them from the Tournament of Power, like Tien and Roshi, you would still refer to them as the Z Fighters. I don't know if you necessarily would for like Krillin and 18, but you guys let me know what you think about that. But with the way Dokkan works, they would either put them in or not put them in without any sort of justification anyway. And then the other units that I noticed that are not on either of these, any Master Roshis would be on there. So I think, yeah, even the Tournament of Power Master Roshi should be on there. So some of the characters, even their Tournament of Power versions, I think should be featured on a Z Fighters category. It just depends whether you want to include 17 and 18 after they've turned good. So then any of the cards where it features them in their, you know, now turned good version, whether you would consider them. So like Krillin and 18 would make it onto that category or not, kind of based on that decision. And then, of course, the only outlier is, like, the Goten and Trunks. I don't think every single Kid, Goten, and Trunks is on here. Like, actually, in fact, by the look of it, none of them have the link outside of the actual LR. So that's interesting. Oh, and the Sword Trunks from Wrath of the Dragon. I don't know if I would necessarily put them on the Z Fighters category. I don't think they need to be on there. Putting all the Kid Trunkses and Gotens on there probably just makes it a bit more confusing. But like the Gohans, even the Super Saiyan 2 Gohan who fought Cell, like the Int LR, I would put him on there. But I wouldn't put the Tech one on there. Even though I guess the BoJack movie is meant to take place before the Cell games. So I guess you could argue that all of the BoJack movie cards, especially because, you know, the main cast of that movie are the Z Fighters, you probably could argue that they should all be on there as well. So I do think that would be a very interesting category. It gives a lot of older, like, super type units from the other categories a chance to be on one of these big summonable LR categories. And then if you pair that with something like Exploding Rage that has a lot of these other good, like, extreme units on it, I think you can make a very interesting team with the Goku. So Connected Hopes would be useful for a lot of people as well. I don't know whether to pick between Connected Hopes, Exploding Rage, or Saviors, but I think Exploding Rage and Z Fighters would be a pretty awesome combo for these links. Because, I mean, some of the characters we talked about, all these Gohans would be on Z Fighters, but then we have all of these extreme units. We have units like Bardock, who obviously wouldn't be on there. The Beeruses, even though it would be hard to fit them on the team. The Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta would still gel with the rest of the Saiyan units and stuff. So, yeah, I think Exploding Rage and Z Fighters is what I would go for the new Goku. So, let me know what you think of those picks, and then let us move on over to Frieza. Okay, so next up we have Frieza. Now, I brought up the first form Frieza, the Prime Battle LR, obviously scene themed around Planet Namek, obviously is on the Namek Saga. I also brought up the Full Power Frieza, because again, he's from the Namek Saga, just to have a little look at the categories that they are on, that could potentially be their leads. Obviously, if he is a Frieza that transforms into Full Power Frieza, he'll be on categories like Full Power, even though he obviously starts out not in that form. So I wanted to go over a couple of the possibilities here, based on not only the lead that I think would fit well with the character itself, but also like that I think needs a little bit more representation in the game, just like the Goku. So first up we have Planetary Destruction. Obviously this category was introduced for Saiyan Day with the Int Broly, who is currently the only character in the game that has a Planetary Destruction leader skill. Obviously the whole end part of the fight with Goku on Namek is, you know, based around finishing off the fight and escaping before the planet explodes. So I think him being a Planetary Destruction leader would be pretty cool. This category is an interesting category. It's sort of like a mix of movie bosses, Terrifying Conquerors, a little bit of like aspects of both of those. And then of course they made some weird choices, like obviously Beerus makes sense to be on here, but it's strange having like the one super type. They put Piccolo and Roshi / Jackie Chan on here because of destroying the moon, which means the category has the wrong name. Like the wiki says, responsible for the destruction of a planet or moon, because otherwise they wouldn't be on there. But remember, the wiki isn't the official explanation. They literally decided to call the category Planetary Destruction and then have characters on here who only destroyed moons. But I think this is a decent category. I think it works best like when you come to team building with, say, like the Int Broly, for example. It works well because it has a couple of units that movie bosses doesn't have that can help fill out that team. I mean, obviously it has Physical Kid Buu, who's one of the best support units for, I was going to say for extreme teams, but pretty much any team that he fits on, to be fair. So this category is pretty good. I do think it having another leader would obviously be very useful. Broly returned on JP recently, so he may not be on the banners, or maybe he'll be on the banner for Global and they'll put a different unit on for JP, who knows. But a lot of people, if you didn't get Broly, you can't even run this category, so I think that would be a solid pick. Next up is probably one of the more obvious ones. I probably should have done this one first, really, but Wicked Bloodline. So remember, the only unit that really has a proper, like, summonable unit level leader skill for Wicked Bloodline is the AGL Metal Cooler, who is now very much outdated. Like most people nowadays, if you're running what you would call a Wicked Bloodline team, you're actually running a Transformation Boost Terrifying Conquerors team by using STR Cooler as the leader. It just so happens that every single unit that you've brought is a Wicked Bloodline unit. So in terms of the actual like specific category lead, we still only have AGL Metal Cooler. He's pretty outdated now. Like, until he gets an easy A, you can't really take him into any of the harder content in the game. Super Battle Road, he can still be fairly useful, but things like the Legendary Goku event, either version, or any of the like newer Infinite Dragon Ball History stages, once you get nearer to the end, he will start to get destroyed. And obviously, you know, it makes sense for a Frieza to lead this category, right? Like, the fact that Metal Cooler was the first leader for like an official, like what we used to just call the Frieza race, like units. It would be very fitting for Frieza to be a new leader for this category. So, next up we have Inhuman Deeds. This is another one that I think would be a good option just because, like, it has one summonable LR leader. So, the LR Nappa and Vegeta is actually one of the very few LRs that I still don't actually own. So for me, I can't run an Inhuman Deeds team unless I build around it by using a different leader. So I think having a new lead for this, like a summonable LR that's only available from Legendary Summon Banners, is obviously a unit that not everybody is going to have. So this is another category that is not particularly easy to run. And because it does feature quite a few Friezas, especially the ones from Namek, I think this would be a good category for him to lead. And then the last one is Space Traveling Warriors. We've talked about this a lot on the channel recently because obviously I did the video for how to beat Space Traveling Warriors mission of the GT Goku event if you don't have Bojack, by using a cooler team. And obviously if you're somebody out there, maybe you don't have cooler, or to be honest that run was quite difficult, so maybe you just can't get it done with that particular team, having a new Space Traveling Warriors leader, especially because I would imagine that this Frieza and Goku are probably going to come out as, you know, the two best units in the game, or at least close, probably both top 5. So if you pull the Frieza, that is obviously going to help you to beat that mission. So I think Space Traveling Warriors is another strong option for him. So in terms of his other leader skill, because I'm going to go by the assumption, as I said before, that they're getting an existing category and a new category, I wanted to have a look at some of the other units. So we know that we are getting a new Zarbon from the story event. Finally an SSR Zarbon, because, you know, there's only a couple in the game, and most of them are, well, they're all Rs and SRs, including the one, like, Monster Zarbon, although technically he's called Super Zarbon in Dokkan. And then, of course, we have Dodoria. I think that because we're getting a free-to-play Zarbon, that probably increases the chances that the side banner unit for Frieza's banner could be a Dodoria. It could still be a Dodoria and Zarbon. It could still be a transforming Zarbon. Maybe the free-to-play one doesn't transform, and then the side banner unit will. So one thing I had a look at was with these units, they don't obviously have a lot of links because they're just SRs, but these guys have Frieza's Minion and Frieza's Army. So if we have a look, Frieza's Army is a link that gives pretty good defensive buff and some attack. And it has like some very random units. I mean, the only UR it has is the Kid, Raditz and Vegeta. And then it has obviously these older like versions of the Frieza, Zarbon, Dodoria. And that's basically it. So the way I'm looking at this is I would imagine what I would do is call the category the Frieza Force. And I would include these units, all these units that have the Frieza's Army link. Then we would have Frieza's Minion is another link, which literally is just Zarbon, Dodoria. We have Kui in here. We've got the R Tagoma. I'm sure at some point once we revisit Resurrection of F, we'll probably get a better Tagoma unit, maybe a better Sorbet. But because we're going to call this category Frieza Force and not just like Frieza's Minions or Frieza's Army, I would put all of the Friezas on here as well, or at least all the ones that make sense. So like, for example, we wouldn't put the Tournament of Power Friezas on here because even though, you know, he's still the same Frieza, he's not really representing like the Frieza Force, so I wouldn't put him on here. But units like the Golden Frieza and Sorbet, I would definitely put on here. And then, of course, to fill this out, I'm quite surprised that they're not on. They don't have either of these links. But of course, we would put the Ginyu Force on there as well. they of course would be on a Frieza Force category. We know that the free-to-play ones are all getting easy A's, and whilst it hasn't been announced yet, I would assume, we talked about this on the podcast, that once you've easy A'd all 5 of these, I would imagine it probably unlocks an Extreme Z area for the Tech LR as well, so that the full team can be fully easy A'd, because the way they've been doing free-to-play LR easy A's is it's an Extreme Z area, and it requires you to have like the fully easy A'd Rainbow team. So what I would imagine is, once this Extreme Z area is unlocked, you have to bring all 5 of the Ginyu Force fully easy A'd and rainbowed, and then I guess they'll let you just use the uneasy A'd Ginyu Force LR that you already have, and then that would be able to get his easy A. Even if that's not the case, and for some strange reason they don't easy A either of the LRs, having these 5 easy A'd is still going to be really, really good. Jace in particular is like a standout unit, because he's on some other categories like Dragon Ball Seekers, Space Traveling Warriors, Special Pose, and his passive is Extreme Allies 2 Ki and a 20% attack, and foresees enemy super attack. So if you give this guy an easy A to give him like a reasonably good amount of defense, and then maybe put that up to like 3 Ki and either attack 30% or maybe attack and defense 20%, he actually becomes a useful unit to put on teams, because as long as he can hold his own defensively, just giving you that foresees enemy super attack ability is super, super valuable. So yeah, that's what I would go for the new category for Frieza. I would call it the Frieza Force. I guess they might just call it Frieza Force, but it would include all of the Ginyu Force, all of these units that have Frieza's minion and Frieza's army, and then obviously I would also put like all the other Friezas from Namek, or any of the other ones like Resurrection of F. I guess even down to, I'd probably put like Mecha Frieza, maybe the King Cold cards, although I mean, I guess he does put like Frieza in charge of the army in the sort of redone history at the beginning of the Broly movie. So the LR Frieza and King Cold would probably be on that category as well. Obviously Cooler wouldn't, but I mean, that's why if they did give him Frieza Force as a new category, I think Wicked Bloodline is probably an unlikely secondary leader skill, because then we're only getting access to the cooler units and like the Tournament of Power Friezas. So for me, if I had to pick something like Planetary Destruction or Inhuman Deeds and Frieza Force, if you look at some of the LRs on here, I think that would make an awesome team. So let me know what you think down below. But yeah, for my final selection, I'm going to go for Inhuman Deeds and Frieza Force. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the possible leader skills for Goku and Frieza, if they are indeed the 2 LRs. There is still the possibility that we find out that they're not, and then this will have been completely pointless, but it's still fun to speculate. So let me know down below what you think of my picks. What would you pick for their leader skills? Let us continue the discussion down below in the comment section. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Masked Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out the links down below for the Discord and the merch store, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.